Well, good morning. My name is Paul, and I'm the youth pastor here, as Pete said, and I'm coming up on being here for a year in September. So about 2 weeks will be my year anniversary of being here. So it's my pleasure to be here with you this morning. But I don't know about you, but my life looks a little bit different than it did a year ago. And many of the biggest changes in my life was when we moved here from Montana to Pennsylvania. My wife was about 30 weeks pregnant, so we had our second child, our son named Brenarin, and here's a little picture of our family. Gives you a little bit about what it looks like in my life right now, where, we're smiling and somebody's not so happy, and then we have our little FOMO baby, is what I call him, a fear of missing out. Renarin is very much has the younger child syndrome already at 9 months old. If you leave him there, if he's around you, he's happy, he's content, he just wants to be around us. But if you put him down and you walk away, or if we walk away from him, he'll just start crying. And he'll look like that. And he's like, no, don't leave me alone, don't put me down, I want to be a part of it. And so much so that at 7 months, he started crawling around, figuring out, hey, I can move and chase you. So now if we leave, he's like, I'm yelling, and I'm also going to bolt after you. So 9 months old, he's crawling around the kitchen, crawling around us. If we leave, he's just following everywhere we go. But I call him our little FOMO baby. The fear of missing out. And the fear of missing out is a real thing. It's something that people take advantage of, that companies take advantage of, and we're like, people don't want to miss out on things. We don't want to have regrets that we missed out on something. Or maybe if we did miss out, we're like, I'm going to make an excuse about it. I'm going to make up a reason why I couldn't do it so I don't feel so bad that I missed out on this opportunity. And there's the story of Deion Sanders, who is one of the few people that played multiple sports. He was an outfielder for the Atlanta Braves and also a cornerback for the Atlanta Falcons. He was in an interview. He said he grew up in Fort Myers, Florida, where he was exposed to a lot of would-be athletes. And he said this about them. He said, I call those guys Idas. If I'd have done this, I'd be making $3 million a day. If I'd have changed and done and practiced more, I would have been a superstar today. When the fact is, when at school ended, Deion Sanders went to practice, where those guys went to the street corner and went to drugs. I went to school, after school I went to practice and kept going and pursuing this, while these guys went to the street corner and never left. We don't need any more Idas in this world. How many of us think if I'd have done blank, my life would be different right now? There's a saying, hindsight is 20/20, but I don't know if that's always true. Hindsight might be distorted, looking back on our life, we might be distorted saying, if I had done this, I would have changed it. I would be in a different place than where I am now. My life would look completely different. Or if I'd have done this, I wouldn't have had the issues that I had. It might be distorted. We might be seeing things in a very different way than what actually happened. But if we live a life pursuing fame and success and riches, we might just miss out on the things that actually come along and are really important. So today we're going to be continuing on our series on Invited. And we're going to be picking up the parable of the Great Banquet, which is right after what Pastor Phil talked about last week. So a little bit of recap if you weren't here last week or need a little refresher. I know I tell youth all the time down there, I'm like, hey, what did we talk about last week? Maybe one will remember. So here's a little refresher. Last week we were looking at, Jesus was at a meal with a bunch of Pharisees at a Pharisee's house who was a religious leader at that time. And he was challenging them and truly challenging them to say, are you being humble or are you making a show about everything? Are you being humble with this invite and who's sitting around this table, or are you making a show of who's here and who's in the presence of this place? Are you seeking out rewards and a form of affirmation from the people around you? Or are you giving out invites to this table that people can't repay you back? And this is exactly where we pick up. So he's challenging them, saying, where are you? What have you been doing? And why are we all here? So if you will grab your Bibles and you flip to Luke chapter 14, verses 15 through 24. If you don't have one, it'll be up on the screen. But it's Luke chapter 14, verses 15 through 24. So when one of those at the table with him heard this, he said to Jesus, blessed is the one who will eat at the feast of the kingdom of God. Jesus replied, a certain man was preparing a great banquet and invited many guests. At the time of the banquet, he sent out his servant to tell those who had been invited, come, for everything is now ready. But they all alike began to make excuses. The first said, I have just bought a field and I must go and see it. Please excuse me. Another said, I've just bought 5 yoke of oxen and I'm on my way to try them out. Please excuse me. Still another said, I just got married so I can't come. The servant came back and reported this to his master. Then the owner of the house became angry and ordered his servant, go out quickly into the streets and alleys of the town and bring in the poor, the blind, and the lame. Sir, the servant said, what you have ordered has already been done, but there is still room. Then the master told his servant, go out to the roads and the country lanes and compel them to come in, so that my house will be full. I tell you, not one of those who were invited will get a taste of my banquet. Some strong words. Not one of those who were invited will get a taste of my banquet. So I wanted to give you a little bit of context of what this means, because it's a little bit different than maybe would first catch our minds. So in this parable, who Jesus is talking about, and his audience would have known, the people were who invited to the banquet of the Lord, who that man was talking about at the beginning of this passage, were the Jewish people. They were God's chosen people, and they knew they were God's chosen people. They were invited to that meal. But in that day and age, when you were hosting an invite, so the seniors that were graduating this year, you had graduation parties, right? Graduation invites say on August 21st at noon, we're going to have this party from noon to 4 p.m. or something like that. But that's not how invites worked back then. Invites were saying, hey, I'm going to have a banquet on August 21st. Can you come? And you respond and you RSVP yes or no. And the reason why they just gave the date and not the time was because they needed to figure out how much food they needed, how much room at the table they needed, how many seats they needed. They needed to figure out how many things they needed to slaughter, get everything prepared for the right amount of people that were invited to this meal. So when that happened, on that day, on August 21st, the master would send his servant out, say, okay, now go out and tell them to come back here at 4 p.m. At 4 p.m., we're going to have our supper. 4 p.m., we're going to gather for this banquet. So that's what happens. The servant goes out and sends out and tells them the exact time to come that day. So these people in this passage knew that August 21st, today, for example, the banquet was happening. And they decided to come, but then they decided to reject that invite, even though they already said they were. But this parable is more than just about rejecting the invite. And here at CFC, we mentioned this morning, our mission is to help people take their next steps closer to Jesus. And I want to invite you along this morning to see in this passage how Jesus is challenging us to take our next steps closer to him when it comes to the invitation process and how we're supposed to invite other people or even respond and take our step closer to him. So the first thing that we can see, obviously, and what this passage is called and what our series is called, is invited. We first need to know that we are invited, and the fact that we need to invite others. So the gospel, if you've been around church, you've heard the word the gospel, or maybe if you haven't, you've heard the word gospel, which means good news. The gospel is for everyone. It wasn't just for the Jewish people. It isn't just for Christians to have a circle, holy huddle, to have a special knowledge. The gospel is for everyone, and it's not against anyone. While it was initially for the Jews, when Jesus died on the cross, that death wasn't for just them. That death was for everyone who was alive then, who everyone is alive in the past that had faith in the coming Messiah, and who for everyone was coming in the future, including me and you in this room and people the coming years to come that we don't even know about. It was sent out to the whole world, not just in that little pocket in the Middle East. Even the Samaritans, if you've read the Bible, if you've heard, they say the Good Samaritan, who were the Jewish enemies at that time. They were against the Jews. People didn't get along with them. Jesus goes, no, the Good Samaritan is the one that helps, or the Samaritan woman at the well. Even Jesus makes examples of people who were against the Jews, who had feuds with them, say, no, they know what it's like. They're going to be the ones that respond. It doesn't matter what your race is, or what your ethnicity is, or your social economic status, or your personality type, or your Enneagram type, or your A, B, C, or D, whatever you are, or your religious preferences. It doesn't matter who you are, where you came from, what you've done in the past, what you did this morning, or what you're going to do when you go home. The gospel is for you, and Jesus died for you. Everyone is invited. no matter what age or stage you are in life. And that's what I love here about CESC is we know that. We want to help everybody take their next steps closer to Jesus. So whether you're someone in this room who is in 6th grade, 12th grade, you're in youth group. We meet on Tuesdays and Wednesday nights. We meet on Sunday mornings for middle school down there. That's why I'm normally down there, not up here. We have things for them. If you're in children's ministry, if you're from birth all the way to 5th grade, we have things for you here. If you're a young adult from the ages of graduating high school to 25, we have something for you that just started up. We have small groups for adults and people of all ages that meet here on Wednesday nights, men's, women's ministry, people that meet in houses all throughout the different communities that we live in. We want to help people of all ages come and take their next step closer to Jesus, to come and accept that invite here. But they first need to be invited in the first place. And that's what I loved about doing baptism this morning, hearing that story, and especially with Emily was saying, Sean invited me. Sean shared Jesus to me. He told me what it was like. I saw the difference in him, and I wanted that. That's what it's about. When she came, she responded to that invite. Jesus changed their life. Jesus changed Sean's life. Jesus changed my life. Jesus has changed so many lives in this room. But first, I think all of us sometime were invited. And we need to respond. Because the banquet is ready. Everything has been set up. Everything is prepared. All the food, the room at the table has been set. People said no. And there is still room. We don't need to accomplish anything. You don't need to bring something. A lot of times if you do something like, hey, come to somebody's house, can I bring any desserts or snacks? Nope. You need to bring nothing. Everything is ready. You just need to respond. But so many times of youth that I interact with, whether it's here in Pennsylvania or other places that I've been, and maybe I think it's a lot of people maybe in this room struggle with this thinking that I have to have it all together. I can go to church or respond to this invite when I fix this in my life. When I stop doing this, maybe I can fix that relationship, or I can come, and when I'm good enough, I need to do this. I need to bring this to Jesus. I need to bring this to this response. And the answer is no. Everything's ready. Everything is done. Every other religion that you look at in this world is do. You need to do this, you need to accomplish this, you need to do this, and then you will get rewarded. But Christianity it is done. Everything is set up. Everything is accomplished. Everything is paid for. Just come. And that's the beauty of baptism and the stories that we heard this morning. But our only responsibility to be a part of this banquet is to respond and come. But I'm not ignorant. I'm not going to say here and say life isn't busy. Life isn't hard. Things come up that get in the way of following Jesus. Life is sticky. Life is hard. But do things just really get in the way? Are we making excuses the same way that the men in this story were making excuses? Now, I'm not undermining that there are valid reasons that come up, that there are valid things in life. A wedding's a big one. I bought something, I can't do it. I can't come to church this morning because I have a relationship. Fill in the blank. We can make valid excuses. Real things come up. Life is hard. Life is busy. But I want to encourage us today, saying, is it really in the way? Or are we just making excuses? So let's look at the people that Jesus invited in the first place, their excuses, and then who he said to invite, because there's an interesting parallel between these people. So first, saying, I bought oxen. I bought 5 yoke of oxen. I need to try them out. Well, if you're a poor man, you can't really buy oxen to try them out. Jesus said, invite the poor. What about I need to go inspect the field? I bought something. I need to go see it. Well, who would buy a house or buy a field without actually inspecting it in the first place? A, it's a bad excuse. B, invite the blind. If you're blind, you can't go inspect something because you can't see it. What about I just got married? I'm busy. I need to focus on my family. I need to focus on my wife. Well, in those day and age, if you were poor, if you were crippled, if you were lame, generally you weren't getting married. So Jesus said, these are the excuses people made. Go out and invite people that cannot make those excuses. Where are we making excuses in our lives that Jesus is saying, it's not a good enough reason? Go and invite people that cannot make those same reasons. Again, I'm not saying excuses are invalid. I'm not saying life isn't hard. But I think this morning, God wants to encourage us to ask questions about those excuses that we're making, to ask questions about those things that we're pushing off, and to take steps of faith to pursue Him over them. And I know for me, one of the biggest excuses that I make is time. I don't have enough time for this. I'm too busy. I need to spend more time with my family. Time. We always need more time. If there was more time in the day, I had done this, right? But what I've learned, and what I'm learning, and still learning, believe me, I'm still learning it, I'm still struggling with it, I need to learn to let God's vision for my life dictate how I have my time, how I spend my time. So what I mean by that, to let God's vision dictate my time, is I'm called to be a husband, I'm called to be a father, and I'm called to be a pastor. I need to let those things dictate my time, not my hobbies, not my interests, not my selfish desires. What God has called me to do, that is what I need to tell me how to invest my time. So we need to not be content with letting our excuses keep us where we are. And again, I want to say that again. Don't be content with letting your excuses keep us where we are. If you're thinking, I'm good enough, I have all the answers, I've checked the box, I do things I need to do, check, 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 or I'm good enough, I did this, so I don't need to do this. If we're being content with where we are, let me tell you, you're either walking away from Jesus or you're walking towards Him. There's no sitting still. Don't be content with letting your excuses keep us from where you are. Because I can promise you one thing. Jesus is better than all of the excuses that we're making. And I loved what they were sharing this morning in those testimonies. Jesus is better than everything that you were making excuses with. Jesus is the one who gave us the ability in the first place to respond to this banquet, respond to that invite because of His work on the cross. He is worthy of everything in our lives, including living a life of service, which leads us to the second point, to look at how the servant responded in this parable and how we can learn in this invitation process. So first, we need to be a servant in life. But what did they do? This servant was obedient. This servant didn't ask questions. The servant was given a task. Go out and tell the people that I already invited to come today. Go out, and he obeyed it, and he did it. The master said, go quickly, time is running, the food is ready, it's going to get cold, it's going to get old, it's going to get spoiled. Go out and invite them because your time is ticking, time is running out. You have till this exact time for them to be able to come and respond and get here and enjoy the banquet that I have set up. He had a sense of urgency that I think we need to have. I know a lot of times I don't have the same sense of urgency that servant had. But we need that same sense. Life is fleeting. There's been at least, I think, 2 people in the youth group that knew other students that passed away this year, whether from accidents or from suicides. Students, people who are in middle school and high school. Things that you're thinking like they have the life ahead of them. I think it'd be hard-pressed to find people in this room that didn't have somebody die affected to COVID. My previous church, we had 2 prominent members in our church die from COVID-related incidences in the first time. Life is fleeting. You never know what's going to happen. We need a sense of urgency. Instead of saying, I'm going to push this off, I don't need to invite them now. No, time is running. Time is running out. Matthew 37 and 38, Jesus said to His disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into His harvest field. People are ready to respond. But a lot of us don't go out and invite them the way that maybe we're called to. The servant was also active. So not only did he didn't sit there, he was obedient. He went and did what he was called to do. He knew he had a purpose and he fulfilled that. Now, can I brag about this next generation for a second? I'm a youth pastor, so that's who I spend most of my time and most of my focus with. But there was a study done in 2019 that asked Protestants 3 different questions to rate from 1 to 5, if I strongly agree or strongly disagree. 3 different questions. One of them was, I intentionally give up certain purchases so that I can give that money to somebody else or use it for something else. 2 is, I intentionally try to serve people outside of my church who have tangible needs. And the 3rd one was, when I have an opportunity to serve someone, I also try to get to know them better. And it was interesting because if you were 18 to 34, so if you're in the young adults or just out of youth group age, 22% of them said, I strongly agree that they give up on purchases so that they can spend it for other people. And that number just goes down the older you are until you get to the 65 and older bracket, where only 8% said that. So the older you get in life, the more or less likely we're to sacrifice from this financial reason to spend time with people. And this is true, and I even saw this coming out in the challenge conference that we were a part of. So I took 15 youth with two other leaders down to Kansas City at a conference we had about a month and a half ago. And the theme of the conference was, there is more. There is more to life. There is more to Jesus. There is more to everything than we think there is. Jesus is more. And on the last night that we were there, the last day, we met together and we said, what are we going to do when we get back? What do you want to do? How are we going to take this back to CFC, to Pennsylvania? What are we going to do? And they came up with wanting to do service. They wanted to serve more, specifically charity. Specifically, I want to provide things for people that are less fortunate, was exactly what the study was talking about. They have a heart for people that are less fortunate for them. So we decided, long story short, was to create a service team where we're going to be starting that in the youth group focused on service. How can we serve our community? How can we serve each other? How can we serve CSC? How can we serve the youth group better? First and foremost, focusing on charity, providing for things for people that cannot have what we have. That is the heart of the people in this church and the youth in this church. And Pete mentioned that we have a volunteer open house on August 31st. If you're looking to serve somewhere in the church, come on Wednesday night, August 31st. People come here looking for answers, looking for invites, looking for the invite to this banquet. Come here, find it out, see where God is placing you and your heart is for ministry, and serve here. But while there are many areas to serve at CEFC, just serving in a church isn't the end-all be-all. It's not the only responsibility that we have. Just like the servant, we need to go out with a purpose and have the duties that we need to fulfill. Which leads us to the third and final point. Go out with a purpose. Our purpose as Christians is simply this. It's the Great Commission. If you've heard it, if you haven't heard it, the Great Commission is this. Go out and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And know that I am with you always to the very ends of the age. To go out and make disciples. Go out and share the invite to baptize people, to invite them into this banquet, to love them. That is the purpose that we all have in our lives. Go out and invite them. Now, not all of us are in ministry. A very small minority of people in this have ministry as their job or vacation, and I understand that. But that doesn't mean we're exempt from going out and inviting people. So if you look up on the screen, we need to learn to live intentionally in different areas in our life. And I think this is just a good stepping stone for maybe us to start thinking this morning. First, you look at home. Where can I be intentional about inviting people to know Jesus to this banquet in my home? In my relationship with my father, with my mother, or with my brother or my sister, or with my husband, or with my finances, or with my health, or if you're single, how am I called to live a life that reflects Jesus, that invites people to this house, invites people to this banquet? Where can I do that in my home? Or what about the church? We've been talking about service opportunities, using the unique giftedness that you have in the body of Christ to love people, to serve, to interact with, to make disciples, to financial giving, to power of prayer that we're hearing about this morning, or maybe even resolve conflict in a biblical way. Wait, we can disagree with people in the church and still get along? That's a little bit different than what culture's saying. Or what about in the world? We are all sent in different areas. We all have unique interactions with people in our neighborhoods, in our houses, in our jobs, in our hobbies, in our friends. We interact with people that are different. I know people that you don't know. You know a lot of people that I don't know. You have unique interactions with people that Jesus is calling you to invite them in to this process, to live a life that shows love to them, to invite other people to this banquet. Because true love, if you truly love someone, you're not going to be worried about that awkward conversations. You're not going to be worried, is this going to make the workplace weird, or is this going to make my friendship or my family relationship weird? You're not worried about that as much as you're saying, I worry about your eternity more. And spending time with Jesus and responding to this invite, because there's going to be a time when you can't respond. I care about you more, and I truly love you more to lay that down and extravagantly love you the way that Jesus loved me. And and have that tangible in my life. If you were to ask me what is true love, I would define it as this. This is the way I define it for a youth group and leadership team. To joyfully sacrifice for the sole benefit of others. To joyfully sacrifice. Sacrifice means it's going to hurt. You're going to have to give something up that you would normally want, or that you would have to, your comfort, your time, your money, whatever that is, you sacrifice for the sole benefit of somebody else. You're getting nothing out of it, like we talked about last week, but to do it joyfully. To do it not begrudgingly, but to do it joyfully. But when we do that, we need to be persistent. We need to compel them, as it said in verse 23. I love that word. Compel them to come in. We need to not just say, okay, I'm going to do it once. I checked it off my list. I invited you. You need to compel them. You need to pursue them. You need to live a life of service, of humility, of sacrifice, of obedience. We need to live that life so that people will see the difference and know. We need to persuade them to not give up and pursue them with everything that we have because time is running out. Can you imagine where we would be as a human race if God gave up on us? Life would look different. My life would look drastically different if God gave up on me, even when I was running away. I can't imagine what that would look like. But I know God is persistent. And there was a story of a man at Challenge testimony, and it was how his mother's involvement in his life showed persistence. He was living a life, we'll just say, that was not following the way that God calls people to live. He was living a life in rebellion, in an open rebellion, ended up becoming a drug dealer, a big drug dealer in Atlanta, so much so that the FBI came in and arrested him and then threw him in jail. But through this time of rebelling, he burned all the bridges in his life. He'd said, no, I don't want you. But his mom was loving him, praying for him day in and day out, was fasting for him, was saying, no, God, bring him to you. She was living a life of persistence where then he was in jail. He goes, I had a lot of time on my hands, so I decided to read the Bible. And let me tell you, Jesus isn't who I thought he was. He met Jesus in jail. So much so that he gave his life to Christ. He started sharing Jesus with other inmates. He applied for Moody Bible Institute while he was in prison. Got accepted into Moody Bible Institute while he was in prison. That's a weird one. Comes out, goes to Moody, fresh out of prison, convict, goes, gets multiple different degrees, travels around the country, sharing his testimony and saying, pursue holiness in your life. But it happened because his mom was faithful and prayed and loved him and pursued him and didn't give up. And there are many people that are hurting in life. If you look around, people are hurting. People are searching for a place that they belong, and they're searching for this invite to this banquet. The invite has been given. The banquet is ready, but there is still room. So my question for you today is this. Where are you in regards to this invitation process? How are you responding to this invite? If you are here today and you haven't taken Jesus' invitation to this banquet, something you're holding back, something you've been holding back for, I encourage you to respond and accept that invite. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to say, Jesus, I want to come. But if you have questions, myself or anybody who was on stage, or Pete or anybody in the back, or anybody that you see who was coming in today, we'd love to talk to you, get to know you more, and help you with those next steps closer to Jesus. Or maybe you're someone who's been following Jesus for a while, but you haven't been obedient to taking that step of baptism that we're celebrating here this morning with like Sean and Emily. Are you making excuses in your life and pushing God off to the side, saying, I'll do it later? Or are you letting God dictate your life? Are you taking steps of faith and letting God's vision for your life take precedence? Live a life of purpose. Live intentionally in such a way that people will see your life and they're so compelled that they cannot deny the truth of Jesus, and they want to come and respond to that invite to the banquet with you. Will you pray with me? God, I thank you that you lived a life, a human life, that you loved us so much that you sent your son down to live a human life, to take on humanity, to limit himself in humanity in the flesh, to die on a cross even when he didn't need to, because he also that I could be invited and respond to this banquet. I thank you that you pursued me when I was running away, when I was inactive, when I didn't want anything to do with you, that you pursued all of us in this room, and you're pursuing us now. I pray for all of us that we can look at you this morning, that we can ask the question, how am I responding? Can I love you more? Can I love other people more? Who in my life do I need to send this invite out to? Because Jesus, you are worth it. So I thank you that you've loved us, that you've pursued us in the past, that you will pursue me today, and you will continue on to pursue us in the future. I pray this in your name. Amen.